The metallic corridors of the Stellar Assembly's headquarters hummed with anticipation. As Commander Marcus Kane adjusted his ceremonial uniform, a relic of Earth's diplomatic traditions, that seemed almost quaint in this vast cosmic arena, light years from his birth world, he stood on the polished obsidian floor of the Assembly's grand amphitheater, knowing this moment would reshape humanity's destiny forever. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's premier xenobiologist, nervously calibrated her scanning equipment beside him. Her dark eyes darted between the assembled alien representatives with barely contained excitement and apprehension. The chamber teemed with extraordinary life forms, crystalline Zephyrians whose prismatic bodies refracted light in mesmerizing patterns, towering Verdanian treefolk whose bark-like skin rustled with each subtle movement, and the ethereal luminous beings of pure plasma contained within translucent energy shells that pulsed with hypnotic rhythms. The chamber's central, I announced in its synthetic monotone, initiating formal contact sequence. Human delegation, please depressurize containment pod and proceed to designated position. Kane locked eyes with Vasquez, both understanding the gravity of this unprecedented moment. With a sharp hiss, their protective pod released its atmosphere into the void, a gaseous mixture that would prove catastrophic to every other species present. As they stepped onto the assembly floor, their first breaths of unfiltered station air triggered an immediate, violent reaction. The Zephyrians' harmonic resonance shattered into discordant screeches, their crystalline forms flickering between transparency and opacity in distress. The Verdanians recoiled as if struck by lightning, their chlorophyll-rich bark paling to sickly yellows and browns. Even the composed luminos convulsed within their energy shells, their plasma cores erupting. In chaotic electrical storms, biological contamination detected, shrieked a Zephyrian council member, the translation device struggling to convert their crystalline vibrations into comprehensible language. Immediate quarantine protocols required. A massive Verdanian elder, its voice like creaking ancient wood, bellowed through the chaos, contain the toxicity before it spreads. Security automatons materialized around the human delegation, their energy restraints crackling mere inches from Kane's face. An impenetrable force field snapped into existence, sealing them within a bubble of rapidly depleting breathable atmosphere. Kane watched in horror as panic consumed the chamber. Council members fled in terror, their expressions mixing revulsion with primal fear. Years of careful preparation, countless diplomatic simulations, centuries of dreaming about joining a galactic community, all crumbling in mere seconds. Marcus, Vasquez whispered urgently, her face pale behind their protective barrier. Our oxygen reserves show 6 standard cycles remaining. 6 cycles equated to roughly 36 Earth hours. They were slowly suffocating while the very civilizations they'd hoped to join watched and discussed. We need communication channels, Kane declared through gritted teeth, his diplomatic training warring with mounting desperation. They must understand we pose no intentional threat. The AI's emotionless response cut through his plea. All communication protocols severed. Quarantine measures prevent contamination spread. A terrible realization struck Kane like a physical blow. To these oxygen-averse species, humans weren't merely carriers of disease, they themselves were the pathogen. Their every breath released what these beings considered a lethal toxin. How could they possibly build relationships with civilizations that viewed them as walking biological weapons? Vasquez, her scientific mind racing despite their predicament, grabbed Kane's arm. Think about this rationally, Marcus. If their biochemistry operates on entirely different principles, different base elements, different metabolic processes, what seems toxic to them might actually be revolutionary. Kane finished, understanding flooding his consciousness. AI, I demand access to our research archives. Compile all available data on human biochemistry, oxygen metabolism, cellular regeneration processes. Access denied. Quarantine protocols prohibit. Override those protocols, Kane shouted, his composure finally cracking. Our world's survival may depend on it. After a tense pause, the AI responded with unusual inflection. Override requires assembly authorization. Unauthorized tampering carries severe penalties. Kane exchanged a meaningful look with Vasquez. Death by suffocation or potential execution for protocol violation, the choice was grimly clear. The risk is acceptable. Proceed with override. The confined space filled with tension as they awaited the AI's response. Each labored breath reminded them of their dwindling time as the override completed, and data transmission began. Asterisk scientific data cascaded across the transparent barrier surrounding Kane and Vasquez, flooding the assembly chamber with a torrent of human biological information. Initially, the alien representatives maintained their fearful distance, security drones hovering protectively around them. But as the transmission continued, a subtle transformation began. The Zephyrians' chaotic resonance gradually stabilized into curious harmonics, their crystalline forms tilting toward the data streams. Verdanian elders swayed in contemplative rhythms, their rustling whispers carrying undertones of scientific intrigue. Even the volatile Luminos began pulsing in synchronized patterns, their erratic energy discharges settling into methodical observations. Hours crawled by as Kane felt the crushing weight of responsibility. The oxygen levels plummeted alarmingly, each breath becoming increasingly labored. Was this desperate gambit merely prolonging their inevitable doom? Then, like a miracle, the quarantine field flickered and deactivated. A solitary figure approached, their pod with measured steps, a high-ranking Zephyrian whose crystalline exoskeleton gleamed with scientific insignia. According to Kane's briefings, this was equivalent to their chief medical researcher. The Zephyrian's multifaceted form refracted light as it spoke, the translator struggling with concepts. Before settling on, life catalyst disrupts our biological matrices, yet analysis suggests unprecedented regenerative applications. The being's crystalline appendages chimed together in what Kane recognized as cautious fascination. Permission requested for controlled experimentation under strict safety parameters. Relief washed over Kane like a tidal wave, his legs nearly buckling from exhaustion and oxygen deprivation. Permission gladly granted, he managed, his voice hoarse with emotion. As Zephyrian medical teams converged on their location, Kane allowed himself his first full breath in what felt like an eternity. Humanity's greatest perceived weakness might just become their salvation. The following weeks, within the assembly's medical complex, resembled controlled scientific chaos. Kane and his team, their health stabilized with specialized breathing apparatus, became subjects in a whirlwind of carefully orchestrated experiments and observations. Zephyrian researchers, driven by clinical curiosity that transcended their initial revulsion, meticulously studied oxygen's effects on their crystalline matrices. It was a bizarre dance of mutual discovery, humans witnessing their most basic biological functions through the lens of alien wonder and terror. Vasquez, ever the scientist, found twisted fascination in how her simple exhalations sent shockwaves through her non-human colleagues. The breakthroughs emerged in remarkable waves of discovery. Verdanian botanical specialists discovered that controlled exposure to human breath could dramatically accelerate growth cycles in their medicinal flora, with potential applications for rapid tissue regeneration. The Luminos beings tentatively used microscopic oxygen doses to boost failing energy cores, essentially jump-starting dead batteries with an element most species considered lethal. News of these revolutionary findings spread throughout the assembly like wildfire, overturning centuries of ingrained biological assumptions. The initial terror surrounding humans morphed through stages: fascination, grudging respect, and finally pragmatic cooperation. A deadly poison for some had become a catalyst for unprecedented advancement for others. Of course, significant challenges remained. Kane spent countless hours in delicate negotiations with wary assembly representatives, establishing safety protocols, containment measures, and trade agreements built around carefully controlled exports of Earth's atmospheric composition. The galaxy wasn't prepared for full human integration, not yet, but the quarantine was lifted, and their biohazard classification was hesitantly replaced with unique resource. One evening, as Kane observed a Zephyrian physician carefully administering oxygen therapy to stimulate cellular regeneration in a critically injured patient, an aged Verdanian elder approached him. Its bark-like skin drooped with quiet weariness. "We misjudged your kind," the elder's voice rustled through the translator. rendering it into soft wooden creaks. We feared what we failed to comprehend. In this facility, poison has transformed into remedy. Kane nodded, emotion tightening his throat. Sometimes humanity's greatest leaps forward emerge from the most unexpected sources. The Verdanian surveyed. The bustling medical ward where humans and aliens worked side by side is seen so improbable. It would have been dismissed as fantasy mere weeks earlier. Perhaps, the elder said slowly, it's true what your ancient texts claim, that from death springs forth new life. The transformation within the stellar assembly was unmistakable. Where suspicion had once flourished, tentative sparks of collaboration now ignited. Trade delegations, initially disguised as biohazard assessment teams, cautiously explored Earth's offerings with growing enthusiasm. Minerals that remained biologically inert on humanity's homeworld proved to be potent energy conductors when infused with trace amounts of oxygen. Plant species adapted to Earth's high oxygen atmosphere revealed revolutionary pharmacological properties when tested on alien subjects. Kane, his title evolving from diplomat to ambassador of atmospheric resources, found himself the unlikely linchpin in this unprecedented trade network. The logistical nightmare of safely extracting, filtering, and transporting Earth's atmosphere became his primary domain. He oversaw construction of massive harvesting facilities in Earth's most remote regions. The Antarctic ice sheets, the depths of the Sahara, and the windswept plains of Mongolia. Fortified distribution hubs sprouted on Luna, and specialized fleets capable of containing the volatile cargo crossed interstellar distances. With this newfound economic importance came grudging acceptance throughout the galaxy. It proved difficult to label a species as threatening when their very breath could heal the sick, power entire cities, or revolutionize industrial processes. The initial whispers of fear faded, replaced by the constant hum of interstellar commerce. Humans, former pariahs of the galaxy, were now grudgingly considered valuable, if somewhat terrifying partners. Life aboard the assembly station transformed dramatically for the human delegation. Their quarters expanded from sterile isolation cells to accommodations designed to replicate Earth-like environments as closely as possible. Vasquez, her initial claustrophobia now a distant memory, practically established permanent residence in newly constructed biodomes, delighting in analyzing extraterrestrial flora's reactions to controlled oxygen exposure. Yet undercurrents of tension continued swirling beneath the surface. Whispered rumors hinted at clandestine research conducted by less scrupulous assembly members, driven by lingering fear mixed with desperate bids for military superiority. Kane understood that the galaxy's newfound dependence on human-sourced oxygen could easily become a strategic vulnerability, a means of control rather than cooperation. One stellar cycle, summoned to the quarters of the Luminos delegation, beings renowned for their cryptic pronouncements. Kane confronted this duality directly. The Luminos pulsed brilliantly in their dimly lit chamber, their energy fields rippling like auroras. Your species traffics in volatile forces. Their collective voice echoed without the usual translator distortion. Life and death contained within a single breath. It brings balance, but also potential for discord. Kane met their enigmatic presence squarely, his years of diplomatic training steadying his resolve. You're absolutely right. Oxygen can serve as a weapon, but it can also catalyze progress. Which path the galaxy chooses remains to be determined. The Luminos pulsed in patterns that might have indicated amusement or perhaps simply unreadable alien calculations. We observe, they intoned. We wait. Years transformed into a full decade. Humanity's integration into the stellar assembly wasn't seamless, but it became undeniable. Oxygen distribution networks snaked across star systems, carrying precious canisters of Earth's atmosphere to distant worlds. Human scientists and engineers became highly sought after, their unique perspectives shaped by an oxygen-rich world pushing technological innovation. Boundaries. Kane, aged by the weight of interspecies ambassadorship, found himself an unlikely celebrity. His once neat hair was now streaked with silver, his formal uniforms bearing more wrinkles than during first contact. The naive optimism of his youth had tempered into pragmatic determination. Earth had also changed irrevocably. Massive oxygen Harvesting complexes dotted the planet, their gleaming structures stark against natural landscapes they carefully sought to preserve. Initial fears of ecological damage prompted rapid acceleration in clean energy development. If humanity was to become the galaxy's lungs, they first needed to ensure their own world could breathe. A restless melancholy settled over Cain despite their victories. Earth felt smaller somehow, diminished. He longed for the scent of rain on fresh grass, the sensation of ocean waves beneath his feet, experiences no longer easily accessible. When your planet's atmosphere had become a carefully regulated commodity, *A, summons arrived that would change everything. The Stellar Assembly wished to bestow upon Cain their highest civilian honor, a symbol of interspecies cooperation rarely granted to individuals, let alone humans. Standing before the assembled representatives once more, beneath the vast dome of the assembly chamber, Cain felt the weight of a decade's transformation. Zephyrians chimed their approval, multifaceted forms gleaming with appreciation. Verdanians swayed in rustling choruses, their bark-like appendages shimmering with bioluminescent applause. Even the stoic Luminos pulsed with what might have been respect. The galaxy, for better or worse, had adapted to the presence of oxygen breathers. As the ornate metal-cold metal against his aging skin was placed around his neck, Cain couldn't help remembering that first desperate moment in the sealed pod. The overwhelming fear and uncertainty. "You have transformed our understanding of life itself," the Zephyrian High Counselor pronounced, voice echoing through the vast chamber. "What was once feared is now essential. We have learned that the universe sometimes presents salvation disguised as threat." As applause swelled around him, Cain contemplated the breathtaking paradoxes of his existence. Humans had taught the galaxy new ways to breathe, yet they themselves felt somewhat stifled by their success. Perhaps, as the Luminos had hinted, true balance remained an ongoing quest, a continuous dance between conflict and cooperation. Poison and cure. Following the ceremony, Cain decided it was time. Decades had passed since he'd set foot on his homeworld's soil, the planet now irrevocably bound to countless others' fate. His request for extended leave met with surprise, then reluctant approval from the ever-pragmatic assembly. Stepping from his shuttle's sterile environment onto a remote landing field's tarmac, Cain was overwhelmed by sensory overload. Air rushed into his lungs, thick with post-rainstorm ozone and wildflowers' heady perfume, a brutal, beautiful reminder of a world that existed before interstellar trade agreements and biocontainment protocols. He found himself at a secluded coastline etched in childhood memory, where the ocean roared with power no space station could replicate. Removing his shoes, Cain let gritty sand squirm between his toes, reveling in primal simplicity. He discovered weathered driftwood and sat, simply staring at the endless horizon where waves crashed in rhythms far older than any galactic treaty. As the sun dipped below the sea, casting violet shadows across the beach, Cain felt decades of tension bleeding away. He wasn't the ambassador, the oxygen broker, or any other weighty title thrust upon him. He was simply human, shaped by an improbable world, yearning for home. His communication device chirped insistently, reminding him of the life awaiting him among the stars. Part of him yearned to ignore it, to disappear into deepening twilight. But Cain knew such luxury was no longer affordable for him or humanity. Rising and brushing sand from his clothes, he acknowledged there were treaties to negotiate, new trade routes to explore, potential conflicts to navigate. The galaxy had grown dependent on Earth's poisonous breath and, by extension, on the humans who carried it in their blood. As Cain turned toward his transport, a sliver of moon peeked over the horizon, seeming brighter and larger than he remembered. Of course, he mused with a wry smile, it likely contained more oxygen in its atmosphere nowadays. The galaxy was forever changed, and so was Earth. Whether that change would ultimately lead to true harmony or combustible future remained to be seen. Cain climbed into his transport, setting coordinates back to the sprawling space station and countless beings who awaited him. It was time to return to the stars, armed with renewed appreciation for the simple yet miraculous act of breathing. But as he lifted off from Earth's surface, Cain carried with him not just the weight of responsibility, but also the knowledge that sometimes the greatest threats could become the most precious gifts, and the most precious gifts could become the most dangerous weapons.